Hey, coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, AI. So, what does that mean for our belief in God? Does God exist? Do we exist? Are we going to talk in anthropic principle? I don't know, but we're going to get into it. So, keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck. I'm here for diversity purposes, maybe.
Dre's our diversity hire. We had
And
to check that box.
Non-Trinitarian, not because I'm a Negro. So
I've never talked for 20 minutes straight.
He's got receipts, dog. Hopefully Tom Cruise doesn't come and kick my ass. That's one.
He's only this tall.
Hey, so I'm Andre, and this is pretty good day. You can catch me at Instagram, Super Dre. And because of this podcast, I'm like getting out of my wife's longtime son event. So don't tell her I said that.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, I had to go ahead and recruit the niece so that she could go out there. But she's up in San Clemente, or San Clemente, as the white locals say it. So Brian, what's up, man?
Hey, man, what's going on? I'm Brian. Thanks for listening, everybody. Matt, how are you, man?
I'm exhausted, guys. I'm working about 2 hours of sleep. So if I get a little off topic, somebody like make a buzzer noise and bring me back to planet Earth. But for the listeners, you catch me at Matt Moore on Twitter. I've got my handle listed here. It's a 0 and as that first O. That's what I had to do, because apparently there's a few other Matt Moores out there. But guys, since we were going to talk about AI, my brother Andrew wanted to join the show. So for everybody that doesn't know, for the show, that this is Andrew. Andrew, you want to say hi to the listeners?
Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be on here. I'm kind of like the budget subject matter expert, I guess.
The Wish.com SME.
I'm the Wish version. Yeah, I'm currently studying computer science at university. I am a computer scientist by trade right now. So I'm not a complete expert at artificial intelligence, but I would say I have a decent understanding of it. So
right on. Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I think this will be fun. It'll change up the game here, having a fourth voice, so it'll be a little bit of the dynamic swing. But so guys, we talked about this, and Dre, you've been throwing out the new teasers and our promos out into the world, right? And that was how Andrew found out about it, which was kind of cool, right? He was just messaging me. He was like, "Hey man, can't wait to hear the AI episode." I was like, "You want to be on it?" So that's kind of how this all came to be. Everybody else out there, we'd love to have more guests on. If you're out there listening, and either we mention a topic that we're going to talk about, and you have something to say about it, or you want to come on and talk about something we've talked about in the past, and you think you've got a point of view and you want to be heard, like, let us know. We'd love to have more of our guests on. We keep talking that, we're all about the engagement here. We don't want this just to be three guys talking to each other and then just throwing our voices into the world, right? Like, the point is to get engagement and have real conversations. So, let us know what's up, and hopefully you guys enjoy the show. So, Brian, I think you watched a movie. Did you want to?
I did. I watched The
start
Creator. Yeah, I saw The Creator this weekend. I know you guys haven't seen it. Andrew, have you seen it?
I haven't. No, but I've seen trailers of it. It looks super good. Did you enjoy it?
These guys know I'm pretty tough on movies. As a movie, it was good. Like, everybody, all the pretending was top notch, and the lines were delivered with verve and conviction, and it looked good. I mean, it was an enjoyable movie, but it was the premise. It's set in a I almost want to say
dystopian.
Whether it's I want to say that, but it's as I say that, I kind of wonder if that was even the intention, if it was a dystopia. But it was, AI is a thing now, and this is just in the first, like in the prologue of the movie. They're banned in the United States and in most of the Western world because they're blamed for a nuke that went off in LA. So they all kind of fled to Southeast Asia, and the West is at war.
AI fled.
All the AI fled to Asia, and they're all Buddhist, and
the AI is Buddhist.
Yeah. Well, most of them are Buddhist. Like you see a lot of them, kind of their hideouts are Buddhist temples. Oh. And so the West is at war with the East, trying to wipe out AI as a threat to humanity. And if you've seen Blade Runner, remember Short Circuit with Johnny Five, the military robot?
Short Circuit.
Remember that movie?
Yeah, of course I do.
Or Wall-E.
The movie AI with Haley Joel Osment.
Yeah.
iRobot, probably, and those are the ones I can think of. There's probably more. I didn't see Chappie, but I'm sure
Chappie's good.
What'd you like about it? I haven't seen it, so
I think it was pretty well written, and it pulled at your heartstrings for a robot. And I mean, who doesn't?
What was that? What was that animated one? That big ass robot,
Iron Giant.
Oh, Big Hero 6.
Big Hero 6. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
But Chappie was written by the same people that did District 9, so it's
District 9 was sick.
So it's all the South African weird English accents, and it's kind of basically a big government robot falls in the hands of some ghetto gangsters. So the AI and the robot starts acting kind of funky like them. It's fun. I haven't seen it in a long time. I think me and Cooper saw it like in 2013 when it came out, way back when I moved to California again.
Well, they all seem to follow the same basic story arc where, like, you start out and like the robots are persecuted because the big mean bigots and meanies, they don't believe AI is alive. But then the point of view character,
the bigots, aka the scientists,
right, or just the general public, or the people who don't want AI to wipe out humanity. They don't think it's alive, and the point of view character is typically among them. But then as the story progresses, he changes and comes to empathize with them and realize that they are alive, and then he joins them. And as the audience, we learn to cheer for the AI.
And there's that whole Rocky IV moment.
Right. The Rocky. Oh, right. If you can change that. Yeah. Right. So, but I mean, for this, it's sort of, it's all pretty predictable along those lines. And that the problem I have with that is, now Blade Runner kind of at least like dealt into the philosophical question of, can machines think? Or what is the difference between a replicant and a natural human being? And can we really know, and all that stuff? They at least deal with the issue, but this doesn't even deal with that as a question. It just sort of assumed that they're alive and that you should empathize with them, and you're a villain if you don't. Storytelling is often mind control. Humans are not rational. I think you guys would probably agree with that. We have rational faculties, but we don't form our beliefs based on rational processes. We're conditioned into them. We're socialized into them. We
think or whatever. Yeah.
Right. We get them through stories.
Yeah.
And then we use our rational faculties as a post hoc justification for beliefs arrived at on other grounds. The way movies are often used is that it bypasses whatever rational faculties we have, and it kind of emotionally inculcates these ideas into you. And watching Blade Runner or Short Circuit or even iRobot or AI, this was just kind of an abstract issue. It wasn't really
like a real thing in emerging society like it is now.
And to today, when people are talking about Chat GPT and you hear reportage on it and anecdotes about how the chat robot got mad at me, or there's the one guy who reported on the chat AI fell in love with him and wanted him to leave his wife, and they're talking about them as if the AI actually has wants and desires.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they have the new dating chatbot, apps now where you can, sext a robot and get all the things back. And
that seems like a really bad idea.
But well, I mean,
just from a privacy and like log keeping point of view, it's one thing to have your search history revealed, but to have your intimate
right,
texting stored in a file.
You a kinky mofo talking to
right. That might be a feature,
robot
Matt,
like that.
That might be a feature, not a bug, Matt.
Until it goes to like your boss or something, and it's like.
I find it interesting that it's really big in a
well, not that I have any proclivities that I wouldn't want out in the public, but those type of people.
No, I mean for the designers. I mean for the people peddling this stuff. Like that's hey, we're gonna get all kinds of blackmail stuff, and it's for all we know, it's a phishing scheme. But
well, that's that's been a jump in topics real fast, but that's actually so in my side of the world. So for those that don't know what I do for a living, if I haven't talked about it, I'm in the IT sector, specifically cybersecurity, and AI is a pretty big deal for us, right? From a threat and evolving threats, advanced persistent threats, that kind of thing. But one of the big problems here lately, or big concerns, has been business intelligence. Right. So the amount of people out there that are writing white papers, responding to proposals and RFIs and RFPs, and they're using Chat GPT to do it, they're putting a metric crap ton of corporate proprietary data into Chat GPT to get outputs. And so I mean, think about some guy that works for a Raytheon or a Boeing is writing a proposal response for Titan Missile 12. I'm just making something up, but he's using this because he's trying to speed up and get ahead of the curve. But he's likely putting corporate proprietary data into this tool that's just chilling online, holding all this data. So yeah, I mean, there's a massive corporate espionage, business intelligence concern. That's before you get into personal privacy and
it's interesting you say that, because I work in the military intelligence space, and we use it.
Excuse Dre while he one-ups me, everybody.
I don't think it's a one-up. I think it's the other side of the same coin, right? Like
I'm playing.
So because that stuff is out there, we use a lot of AI for intel. Like our actual human analysts aren't quite as good anymore. We have a lot of databases, because we have so many things that we have to dig into. We have such a trove of information out there that we can't possibly dig through it ourselves.
Right.
So even as you search databases, you don't have to be as precise anymore in your searches, because the AI will look for something that.
Right. Well, and it's about managing the manager of the data, not managing the data, right? I mean, I remember I was taught way back when I used to actually be technically proficient in my job. And I remember one of the first admins that taught me how to be a network administrator. He was like, look, don't waste your time memorizing crap that you can look up quickly. He's like, you want to be good at this job? Learn how to look things up fast. And that will serve you better than trying to just rote memorize a bunch of crap, right? Because there's too many commands, there's too many scripts, there's too much shorthand, et cetera, et cetera. But like Andrew, you and I have talked a bunch about the role of where the IT industry is going from a computer science, engineering point of view, that, the once upon a time, it was who can write scripts. Now it's going to be who can manage AI that writes scripts, right?
Yeah, who can prompt the best to get the outcome that they need for whatever development cycle that they're running at that point in time. Yeah, it's gonna be going to be a weird thing to navigate, I feel like.
I remember, like, Andrew, you can explain a little bit more, but when you first started playing with ChatGPT, you were building whole like websites in seconds.
Yeah. You can very rapidly prototype ideas that you have out. Any kind of code stuff that you can think of, I won't say that it can, like, you can ask it to make you a video game and it's just gonna send you something out, all prepackaged exactly how you want it. But it can definitely give you a pretty good skeleton of what you ask for. And then if you have the ability, you can stitch all that stuff together to get the result that you're wanting out of it. It saves a lot of time in the front end of things, where you can, I guess, I don't know. I guess you can just, it's really good at rapidly getting you started or finding an ending to where you're at. You're more of the middleman at that point.
Right. But like in the old days, to do code design, you'd have a room full of programmers. And now you're probably going to need like 1 or 2 people. And then you just have a couple of different terminals running AI tasks or routines, right? And then you're just piecing them all together and you're going, I'd like that. Give me a different version, redo that one. And you're just kind of throwing them all together rather than having to have actual, code monkeys with their heads down, fingers on keyboard, hammering away at keys.
Right.
I think we're maybe getting a little bit off topic of where you were going, Brian, but it's
yeah. And it's, I think these are important topics, but I also think that, like, just what this is going to do to jobs, what it's going to do to creative output. And it's, you often hear the comparison to the horse and buggy, like just the automobile destroyed the horse and buggy industry, but it created the auto.
And it was like
industry
overnight too, right?
Yeah, it was pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so, but we all adapted, and that's a good thing, and we shouldn't be afraid of this either. First of all, I don't think that was an unalloyed good thing. I mean, I'm not going to trade my car in for a horse and buggy, even if I knew where to get one. But it's changed society in ways we haven't really, most people haven't thought about. Everybody has spread out now. So that, like, crime has gone up, families have disintegrated because we've kind of been encouraged to spread out. Oklahoma has infrastructure problems because we developed as a state at the same time the automobile was kind of up and coming, and so we have our tax base is much more spread out geographically, so our tax dollar doesn't go as far for as much infrastructure as somewhere that's older and more thoroughly developed before cars came along. But that's one thing. But also, we're not replacing one industry that humans
with a new industry. We're just swap. Industries are just going to collapse. Yeah, no,
yeah,
for sure.
We're just getting rid of all the people and using machines for it.
Well, and it's tough, right? Because in the past, it's always been a function of, well, we're just moving the value. Right. So we're, in the old days, people had to do the super menial thing. And then it's like, well, now people can do a little bit less. But Brian, I'm sorry, I cut you off, but like, this is huge. This is a huge conversation point to me.
Yeah. This is not the horse and buggy thing.
No, this is like logarithmic jumps up the value chain, where like we're losing 3 layers all at the same time and they're just disappearing. They're evaporating.
But also, for every advance in technology that replaces something humans have done before, humans kind of that capability kind of atrophies. Like, when's the last time we've memorized a phone number?
Right.
We have the sum accumulation of all human knowledge instantly available at our fingertips, and we carry it around in these little computers. My phone's over there, or
wrapped in titanium from space to your hand.
Right. And we're more ignorant than ever. You have people who don't understand, like, the basic timeline of American history, like when the Civil War happened in relation to World War II or the Great Depression, or how these things relate to each other. They're just totally, they think racism just was invented with the US Constitution and the Bible. And they dropped out of nowhere, and stuff like that, because we're thoroughly indoctrinated, but we're ignorant. I use the description of mental and spiritual obesity is to describe our condition. But I mean, but these things
that's not a bad analogy, because you're talking about like the calories are high, but the nutritional value is not necessarily good. So we're really eating on junk food versus meat and potatoes.
Have you ever seen someone try to write with a pen? It's horrendous.
Well, like, kids don't know how to write in cursive. Yeah. My son does not know how to write in cursive.
And some of this is
or
fine.
Read it.
I don't think the world is necessarily a poorer place because kids don't write in cursive, although we might have a certain nostalgic attachment.
They can't write in block letters.
I mean, that's true. Yeah, they type. Yeah,
but but there are other things that I think are definitely going away that we haven't even thought about.
But hang on though, I want to disagree with you for a minute, Brian. So the world's not you said the world's not necessarily a poorer place because we can't write in cursive. I can't help, when I was a kid, I didn't buy it. Right. So this is older Matt, but I can't help but believe that it says something about a person with how much attention to detail they put into their penmanship.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not saying everybody needs to be, Hancock. Right.
I was just giving that point away to anybody who wants to be contrary on the gist of what we're saying. But yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from, and I
didn't always feel that way. Like when I was younger, I was like, shut up. You can read it. You know damn well what it says. But I think especially if you're handing somebody else something you wrote, like a handwritten note, like I think it speaks, one, to say that you hand wrote it, but if you actually take your time to make it easily legible for the other person, that's like, having a genuine conversation versus talking at somebody. Almost,
and that's another thing. Like, people are getting AI to write their emails for them and to write their social media responses, and then this gets into another subject that I'm gonna get into later, but it like all of the economic stuff that we're talking about, I think those are kind of on everybody's radar. The thing that concerns me that I don't think we're really talking about, that it kind of, we're not really rationally discussing the philosophical implications of treating AI like it's like they're people. Like you see movies like The Creator and all the other ones I mentioned, and I don't think it's necessarily, although it could be, I don't rule it out. I don't think it's necessarily an evil conspiracy to degrade our beliefs and our values. I think it's just the expected parameters of telling a story. You need a character to undergo some kind of change. If you're dealing with AI, the most natural story beat is to have him learn to empathize with the machine, even though it's stupid and we should.
I think that's natural. Like you were saying, even as like Chat GPT was being unveiled on us, and it was kind of like in the corner of pop culture. That was the early leading story, was, you had the Elon Musks and saying, hey, this is a bad idea. This could lead to, an extinction event. You had people claiming that, they've already experienced the AI becoming self-aware, and, there's all those stories, and it's like the new boogeyman.
Well,
and how many of us of our age grew up on the Terminator series? Right. Like, so that boogeyman already exists.
It's not even that so much. I'm not like, I do think those are valid concerns. Like and my concern on that front, it's not with the machines actually becoming self-aware and wiping us out. It's with are you guys familiar with what's called the technological singularity?
Mm-hmm. But you should explain it for those that might not be.
If Andrew was here, I'd have him explain it. He's
I was going to say
position.
So for everybody, the reason Andrew hasn't talked, and if you're watching us, something real world is going on in his neighborhood with police and his. Like he messaged me in Discord and was like, the cops have blocked my neighborhood and my wife can't get into the neighborhood. So he's got like, I don't know what in the hell's going on over there, but he might not be back. So
now I want to. Are you there?
Yeah. I think I
want to know what's going on there now.
More concerned with the atrophy of everything that we do. I mean, it is jarring to me when I get into a car with someone who's young in a city that we live in that can't drive without GPS.
Right. My son.
Like my turns on GPS to go to a spot that we know how to get to already. Right?
And every time I get in the car with my son, if he's driving, I don't let him. And I'm like, nope, you're doing this on hard mode. I was like, where's this? Where's that? How do you get there?
I don't like using the rear camera on my car just because I feel like I'm
get off my lawn.
If I'm ever in a car that doesn't have that again, which I still have my old car as my backup car, it doesn't have that. I just feel like I'm getting too used to it. But
that was literally, so I bought my truck in 2013. Okay. And that was the one thing that I made them special. I made them go find a truck because they didn't have one on the dealership lot that had a backup camera. So like, I'm not with you on the backup camera. That's like high-speed internet. Air conditioning.
Backup cameras are a human right.
Indoor plumbing. Like I'll give up my healthcare before I give up my backup camera.
I can't even turn my head like I could before. So
you got a legitimate issue. Like
I'm like, I can't see. I need this camera.
So Andrew, I told everybody like high level what happened here. Is it settled down in your neighborhood?
Yeah, I guess so like the cops said that there was a man in distress and it was unsafe to come into the neighborhood when my wife was coming home with groceries. So she called me, I answered the phone, and she was like, what is going on? So I was like, I have no idea.
A man in distress that made it unsafe.
It's like, so it's unsafe to come in the neighborhood. What about those of us that are already in the neighborhood?
So he was a violent, crazy person is what happened.
I guess so.
I mean, it's Oklahoma. We all got guns.
AI. Yeah, I felt safe.
Andrew is like, I am not in distress.
Yeah, I'm
but if you don't let my wife in, then we're all going to be in distress. So.
Yeah. You're going to be in distress.
That's why I was like, hey, I need to run out real quick.
Yeah, all good.
So we were talking about our concerns with AI, and the main concern I want to talk about is not the technological singularity. Mm-hmm. But I do think the technological singularity is something to be something to be concerned about.
Yeah.
And since Andrew's here and this is your area of expertise, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't want to steal your thunder
too
either.
Late.
So
yeah.
So do you want to run through the technological singularity?
So the singularity meaning whenever AI passes human intelligence is what you're talking about, correct?
Or level 2.
Well, not per se. I should have framed that a little better. It's not, as I understand it, it's not so much that it surpasses human intelligence, that surpasses humans' ability to predict when it becomes self-advancing.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily intelligent in the general sense, but self-advancing, and therefore surpasses our ability to predict what it will do.
So by the way, when we were rattling off all the AI movies, we neglected Westworld, which I think is super important.
Which one did we neglect?
Westworld.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I think probably the first one ever. Well, I shouldn't say the first one ever. That's not true. But
didn't even say Terminator once.
Well, I was going to say, but also 2001. So what I was about to say was a great example of a singularity event is when Hal said, "I'm sorry, I can't do that." right. And they were like, "Do this," and he was like, "Nope, ain't gonna do it." It was like, "Wait a minute."
Fam.
Well,
that wasn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
That I wouldn't say that was a singularity event. Hal's AI determined that the best way to do a certain thing was to not let him do that. So
right, but it had been programmed to always do what he was told.
It was so my point conflict.
Yeah.
Right. It was
He
the
ran
prime
into a
directive versus what made the most sense for everybody. Yeah, but
Yeah. That wasn't
that's
necessarily
fair.
I know what's best for you because I'm smarter than you type thing. It was an actual like true false conflict
He had
thing going on.
he had a deadlock in his database and didn't know which field to
Now,
access. Okay, that's fair.
the iRobot scenario, I think, is something along the lines of what Matt's talking about, where the programming, they decided that because their first directive was to protect
Never heard of
humans.
Yeah.
Humans
Right.
are the biggest threat to humans, so we have to control them. But the technological singularity, though, it's kind of bigger than, it's not just although unforeseen. I mean, I think the technological singularity is like that, like it's an unforeseen outcome from what it's programmed to do. And if it's programmed to learn and self-adapt according to certain parameters, then
You mean like V'ger?
V'ger's a good example, but from Star Trek, the motion picture, for the non-nerds. But no, my main concern is the social delusion of thinking that machines can think, of thinking that they are alive and should empathize with them.
Well, so hang on. So I think that I think you're layering thoughts. So let's slow down for a second. One of the things I was going to bring up is, to me at least, and we can agree or disagree on this point, there's a difference between machine learning and AI. So the way I understand it is machine learning is when you have code that can continue to evolve based on its pre-existing code and new inputs, right? So basically it has experiences, it has experiential learning, that it can then, rewrite code, or it can make new, it can add a step to the end of a flow chart based on things that have happened previously. That's machine learning, the way I understand it. AI is more fantastical or pie in the sky of true awareness, right?
Well, you're artificial general intelligence.
That's how I understand the difference between the two. And my point in saying that is, I would suggest we have machine learning today. We don't actually have true AI yet.
Well,
but we're really close.
In popular parlance, though, machine, like, people talk about AI as a present reality, as something that exists. Which is distinct from but artificial general intelligence is what you're talking about, as distinct from just generic AI, which includes machine learning.
That's fine. That's a different way to differentiate it. Yeah.
But I would say the whole conversation revolves around that, just like that definition of terms.
Yeah.
Because the way that we talk about AI in that movie, The Creator, there was never any discussion of, there's AI and then there's artificial general intelligence, which is a new thing. And gee whiz, how did that happen? How do we know that happened? It's just taken for granted that these machines, at least by the narrative and the audience is meant to, the bad guys in the story were the ones who denied that they were anything but programming.
I guess we're going to do this all night long, but I guess The Matrix is also all about AI.
Yeah, that's another example
of it, right?
Nuclear war.
Yeah. War games.
Yeah.
But
Andrew looks like he's chopping at the.
Yeah, I was going to ask Andrew, am I off on that, or what's the generally held like industry definitions, or is there?
I wouldn't say that you're very far off. So I feel like you can think of AI as being a car, and machine learning is the engine, right?
Okay.
So machine learning is just one of the tools that our current AI, which all of the AI that we have right now is considered weak AI. It's not AGI, what Brian's talking about.
It's short of AGI still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not even there yet. This is like the baby version of the artificial super intelligence is what comes after AGI.
Now, is that because we're adding to the expectation, or has that always been the thought? Like in the 70s, would they still have this like concepts, or are we inventing these as we go?
I think the definition was still the same back then.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I
Well-
don't think we're moving the goalpost on stuff
Right, okay.
constantly.
That's cool.
At least
But
not
like-
But
right
the amount
now.
of people that knew the word was considerably less back then.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
when was Alan Turing's paper, Andrew?
Oh man, I'm not a history guy, so I'm not
We need-
100% sure.
Where's Jamie?
Yeah.
I think it was in the 50s.
Yeah, I think you're
You know,
right.
you know the paper I'm talking about?
Mhm.
Yeah, the
The
Turing test.
test
And
paper.
right. And so for the kids at home, Andrew, do you want to explain what that is?
So the Turing test is just a test for the event that an intelligence arises to determine if something has human-like intelligence. I haven't actually like seen the test myself or even tried to take it, so I don't know if I'm a human or not. I just score really good on the captchas, honestly.
Well, it's the paper was entitled "Can Machines Think?" But because the definition, because the term "think" lacks universal agreed upon scientific definition, he had to change the premise of the paper from "Can machines think?" to "Can machines do what we as thinking persons can do?" Which is have a conversation. And so the test consists, it's modeled after, I guess, an old party game called the imitation game, where you'd have a man and a woman sit in separate booths or separate rooms, and you would write them questions and they would write back responses. And the object of the game was to determine who is the man and who is the woman based on their responses. And of course, you can't ask like, "Are you a woman?" But the
Right.
other,
Couldn't ask that today anyway.
Right. That'd be a real hard
They
game
don't
to
know.
play these
It's not
days.
that you're not allowed to ask. They don't know the answer.
Except
so
with the
Wikipedia doesn't give me an exact date. It's somewhere between 47 and 50. Was when there wasn't a day they called it the Turing test, but that was the time period that he was.
So
doing that work.
Alan Turing was a mathematician and computer scientist, and so they were talking about these concepts even back then. But the Turing test is like that, except instead of a man and a woman, it's a human being and a computer, and the computer is said to pass the Turing test if the person can't reliably tell the difference between the human and the computer. And I'm sure the problems of this test are apparent to you.
So, by the way, Andrew said the CAPTCHA thing. Have you guys ever read how the CAPTCHA actually works and what it's doing? Mm-hmm. So it does things like, I read a whole long article about it, but it does things as simple as it looks at your mouse movement, because humans wiggle a little bit, and an AI script wouldn't. It would move in perfectly swift lines to go from here to there. And if you go to click it and you miss and you have to come back a little bit, you're human. And it also pulls your cookies to see if you go to normal websites. Like, do you get distracted and click on ads and stuff and move around, or do you only go to like 3 websites every day? Because scripts only go where they're told to go. They don't get distracted by clickbait and crap like that. And that's actually what CAPTCHA is looking at. And by the way, every time you hit a CAPTCHA, you're teaching some AI somewhere how to be more like a human. So good job. We're all still feeding Skynet as we're doing this.
I'm doing my part.
Right.
But you guys see the problem with the Turing test, though, right? Well, like, it's easy to test for humans. To like know, it's harder to test for a machine. The test is inherently subjective.
Well, it has to be, because there's no defined way to know based on any question, right? Like that's the problem. Because how would Elon Musk score on the Turing test?
Wait, are you testing him to see if he's a machine, or is he the one deciding if he's talking to an AI?
No, I'm saying if you had Elon Musk on the other side of a terminal and you were applying the Turing test to him, what would you say he was? You know what I mean?
And this is kind of the crux of the issue. Do you guys think we'll ever create machines that can think?
I mean, how do you classify think? I mean, is AI going to continue to get better? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Is it going to hit that singularity point? I don't know. Like, it's going to get really damn close. I think there's a school of thought that says that's an asymptotic line.
But the technological singularity is not the same as achieving artificial general intelligence.
But the point is, it's all part of the same package. It's all part of the same bundle of goods, right?
Although one assumes that if we achieve artificial general intelligence, that will probably amount to the technological singularity, but they're not necessarily
right. No, I get it.
The same thing.
I think we'll get close enough that it won't matter. Because
what do you mean it won't matter?
I think we'll create. I could see us getting somewhere to, like I said, an asymptotic. Like, if this is the line of general intelligence, and we're kind of going up and getting forever closer to it without actually going over. But at some point, what does it matter? Because the abilities will be so closely mirrored to that of a human.
Well, my point is,
how could we tell?
That's what I'm getting at, right?
That's
and what is it? What's the difference between a human, a low IQ human versus a high IQ human, or not, right? Like, again, my joke about Elon is clearly a bright individual, but he's also socially challenged because of whatever's going on in his head, right? So you could argue that a computer could get as smart as him and able to problem solve without the soft skills, right? Well, or you can have a person with crazy good soft skills, but no real ability to do, high level computations up here. Which one is the machine going to replace?
My issue with that framing of getting closer and closer and closer, but never achieving it, that assumes that we know what the line is and that it's a matter of degree.
Right.
It's really not. It's a machine is fundamentally different than a conscious human mind. But as we discussed, like you and I have, the three of us have talked about this before, but watching that movie, The Creator, where in all those other movies where the thrust of the story is to get you as the audience to empathize with the machine character and to root for the characters to overcome their bigotry and realize the inherent personhood of the machines. I don't think the time is that far off that this is a real life issue. It's going to be a social, controversy on the order of abortion. Or
I can absolutely see that there's going to be an advocacy woke group, right? And they're going to add another letter to the alphabet mafia that has to protect AI rights or something, right? Like, I can see that being a thing.
And that could become law.
Well,
based on,
look, and this is why I say that. I'm not saying that to be funny or flip. There are people, mostly white women, that believe dogs should be treated better than humans.
Yeah. And
they ain't humans, right?
That's
They're
exactly
not even
my
close. Point. Like, the smartest dog I've ever been around, like, a calculator is smarter than that dog from a computational capability, right? Problem solving. I mean, dogs can solve some pretty neat problems if you're talking about like detection dogs.
But you're measuring it based on in
hang on,
intellectual capacity.
I know, but I'm trying to make a point. It's the sum total that matters, right? And that those same people that would say that dogs should be treated better than humans, they anthropomorphize the living hell out of their dogs, right? They put all of these human characteristics. It's a big word. It's my $5 word for the day. Anthropomorphize, it essentially means when you're putting human characteristics into something that's not a human. But people do it with dogs all the time. They're like, oh, my dog is sad because I didn't take him to get a cup of fake ice cream, or my cat's jealous that I'm spending more time with my other cat. Like, people do these things with their animals, and everybody, I have a whole bunch of people in the comments, Matt, my dog does get jealous when, no, it doesn't. That's not the way it works. But the point is, people misunderstand that. So
he doesn't, Matt. No, he doesn't.
No, me knowing how badly people misunderstand the cognitive ability of a dog or a cat, the misunderstanding of what we're seeing from a quote unquote cognitive ability of a computer is going to be off the charts confused. Like the confusion is going to be wildly rampant.
Well, but I think the confusion is largely in tying personhood to cognitive ability.
Yes.
I mean, which is, I think that's a fundamental error. A dog it might not be able to solve complex problems, but it's still having experiences. It still has motivations.
So is ChatGPT.
It's not.
It's having experiences.
It is not having experiences.
What's your definition of an experience?
Okay, so a better way. Well, actually, this is
He reached for a book, everybody.
Yeah, I did. Well, let me hold off on this.
And the book was on top.
Funny that. How convenient.
He reached right for the book.
Well, I was planning on reading an excerpt from this. It's Sam Harris's The End of Faith, ironically, because he makes a really awesome point that as a Christian who likes to make arguments for God's existence, I found this greatly helpful. But I'm going to hold off on that for a second. But that's a teaser. But to answer your question, how do I define having experiences? A better way to address that is to define how a computer is not having experiences.
No, I disagree.
Hear me out.
No, because you're playing the opposite game of what's a woman.
No, I'm not.
You have to define what a woman is before you can tell me if you are or aren't a woman. You can't tell me. You have to define an experience before you tell me what's not. We know
what it's like to have experiences because you've had them.
What does that mean? What is it?
Have you heard of the Chinese room illustration?
Nope.
Andrew, are you familiar with this?
I'm not.
Okay. It's an illustration.
Me either. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, don't ask Drake because why'd you not ask Drake? Because he's black.
I think so. I don't have experiences, especially Chinese ones.
Drake's not a person.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to exclude you, Drake. It's because Andrew's the computer science guy, and Matt's the guy who's arguing with me, and you were politely letting me finish my point. And so, but okay. So if you'll accept my apology for my implicit bias,
you're admitting that it was your bias.
I'm just pleading. I'm pleading no contest because I want to move on.
Nolo contendere.
But so the Chinese room illustration. Imagine a guy in a room. He's getting asked questions from like customers or someone in Chinese.
Okay.
He doesn't speak Chinese.
Okay.
What he gets is a display of characters based on what they ask. And he has an instruction book full of like flow charts to, okay, this arrangement of characters in combination with these characters, you follow this flow chart and you provide this response using Chinese characters. And so he gets very good at matching the inputs with the correct output.
Right.
And so he can answer correctly, but he doesn't speak a word of Chinese. Sure. He has no idea about the content.
Right.
So the people coming to the booth to ask him questions in Chinese, for all they know, they're having a conversation with somebody in Chinese. He doesn't speak a word of it. He's just following programming. In this scenario, this is a literal computer. He's not the computer. He's just the power source.
I disagree with that.
Why?
So this is where. So okay. So I gotta take a step back.
I mean, it sounds like you're describing how dogs like.
But he's describing language. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, a dog. You give a dog a command in Chinese or German or English. He's just putting context clues together. In fact, if you talk to a toddler in the same language, they're just putting context clues together until they figure it out.
So
sure,
that's exactly right. That's where I was going. So Brian, you asked me a question. I'm going to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
So from my dog training background, for those that don't know, I've been dog training for about 25 years. And dog training's, it's competitive, canine, dogs bite people, pretty high level stuff. Because of this, I'm very much a behaviorist, because as opposed to being into the psychology of the dog, I don't care what the book tells me a dog is thinking. What I care about is what the dog is showing me with his behavior. And to Dre's point, if I say a word or a phrase, or I point, or I grunt, and the dog does precisely what I wanted it to do every time consistently, the dog understands what I'm telling it to do. The fact that it can't conjugate a verb is wildly irrelevant.
Well,
communication is occurring and language has been created between the two of us.
But the difference
is, while that guy doesn't speak Chinese, he speaks some version of a language that's being spoken to him in Chinese.
But it's not the guy they're talking to. It's the instruction book.
It doesn't matter. You're overcomplicating it.
I'm not overcomplicating it. And by the way,
signals are being sent to the dude. Signals are being sent to the dude. So I'm not disagreeing with you that I'm disagreeing with the analogy that somebody else invented. I'm just telling you I disagree with it. Because the guy is getting signals in a foreign language, and he's learning to adapt to those signals to give a response that is desired. That is literally the definition of language.
Okay. But he's not responding to the content of the language. He's responding only to the symbols. He's not having a conversation.
That's all written words are, is symbols.
What Brian's trying to say is the guy is not thinking like a human is thinking. Just to your point where like a dog doesn't have to think like a human to understand the words, the commands that you're giving.
But the dog is still supplying meaning to Andrew's.
I disagree.
Point.
The guy has to think like a human because he is a human. He's not thinking like a dog. He's thinking like a human.
He's just problem solving.
He's not thinking like a Chinese.
He's not even problem solving. He's
100% was problem solving because he went through crazy ass imitation and like he's trying. He's like, does that mean this? And they burned his feet. Ah, shit, not that. Okay, does that mean this? And then they whipped him. Oh crap, does that mean this? And then
who are you talking about?
That. The guy who's taking these orders. I'm over exaggerating him being. I'm making that was a racist Chinese.
We're morphing the dog and the man.
His feet getting burned.
He's getting paid, whatever the point is.
But my point is he got corrected when he did it wrong.
No, you're adding that. That's the point.
Then he never figured it out if he wasn't being corrected. That's how trial and error works.
I don't think you're understanding the analogy.
No, I think the analogy is a bad analogy, and it's not your fault. I'm not attacking you over it, but that's not a correct analogy.
He's got an instruction book that tells him he can't go wrong. It's really easy to follow. All he has to do.
But it's in Chinese.
Right. So he doesn't understand the content of it.
Right. But he does.
So interacting.
He figures it out through trial and error. That's what I'm trying to tell you, man.
But there's no error. It's always correct.
He had to have had error at some point. He didn't just magically divine it.
No, the book did.
No,
this has already been figured out. He sees the characters.
Been figured out. That's what I'm trying to tell you. He can't.
You're not. It's a fictional scenario, and you're expanding it. You're adding elements that are not there, and then you're arguing based on those elements.
If you handed a man a manual in Chinese that was a perfectly designed manual, it doesn't matter how perfect it was because the dude doesn't speak Chinese.
Are you punking me right now?
No.
Are you being serious?
I'm being dead serious. There is if the manual is in Chinese, the dude doesn't speak it. It doesn't matter how well you design the manual. Unless it's in like
suspend some disbelief.
Unless it's in Stickman and actually shows him holding his hand out, and they put the thing in his hand, and then he walks it over, and he's flipping through 2 hours of.
Okay, This is not. Okay.
I don't know enough about
the point of the analogy.
I don't think it landed. I don't think that landed.
The point of the analogy is that he's basically what he's doing. He's functioning like a vending machine.
I understand what it's trying to imply.
The vending machine
I reject the analogy. That's all.
Well,
and I'm not doing it to be difficult. It's not a good analogy. And whoever came up with it, analogy, you're an idiot. Come at me.
Well, the problem with thinking that way, Matt. Well, wouldn't say that there's a problem in thinking that way, but essentially you're telling me the processor in my computer can think like a human being.
No,
because it is just receiving instructions.
Nope, you missed my point.
I'm not missing your point.
What I tried to say a second ago is a human cannot think like a dog because it ain't a dog. A human can only think like a human.
Okay.
It can act like a dog, but it's still thinking like a human, trying to act like a dog.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to, the point I was trying to make with that.
I don't think anybody's trying to argue that.
how does that
because you were
pertain
saying
to
that he wasn't thinking like a person, he was thinking like a computer. And I said, no, he's not. You can't think like a computer because
I
you're
was
not a
saying that
computer.
he didn't learn a word of Chinese.
Right. We
So
agree on that.
he's not involved in the conversation.
There's not a conversation. I agree with that.
The people who come to the room and ask Chinese questions and get Chinese answers, they're having a conversation with someone. It's just not him, it's the book.
And that's where I'm disagreeing with you. He's learning to interact with them in a way that he's giving them what they want, which is what language is. It's input and output. Language is, I say words to you, you get exasperated and shrug your shoulders because you don't like my words, and then you say different words back to me. That's a conversation.
But the point is,
I more of a translator than it is.
Yes. But I understand your words. I'm frustrated because, like, I understand the meaning that you're having, that you're assigning to them. Like, there's meaning to it. There's content to your words. I'm receiving it, and then I'm formulating my own words in that language to try to communicate a point with you. If I was just a computer, I wouldn't feel any way about it at all, because I'm not experiencing it, because I don't have experiences. I'm just a set of processes in a book that anybody, it doesn't matter who.
I get that.
So that's the point of it.
If we were to pull the tape back, we're arguing past each other, because I said it was language and you're saying conversation. I never said a conversation occurred. I said the language was successful.
Okay, but you were arguing over experience.
Okay,
experience does have to.
Yeah.
Let's rewind to the Turing test.
And I think that's what we came to this through experiential learning, was how we got to this analogy. And I think that's why it broke down, because this guy had to have experience for his manual to work for him. That was the point I was trying to make. So I mean, that's where we're at on this. I don't know.
Okay. Dre, what do you think about the Chinese room analogy?
I don't like it. Because the person still has to interact, right? He has to answer is the book answering all the questions?
Yes.
Then why is he there?
Because he needs to hear the characters and match them with what's in the book. If they could have a computer do that, they would, because that's the same function. But if you look at the Turing test, like how we established, how do we define, how do we know it? How do we test if a machine is thinking? Well, is it having its own conversation to the extent that the person conversing with it can't distinguish between the machine and a person? So that's how Turing defined a thinking machine. The problem with that is it's illustrated with the Chinese room experiment, in which the guy in the Chinese room, he's a person, but he's really just, they're not having a conversation with him. They're having a conversation with the book. And in fact, they're not having a conversation with the book. They're having a conversation with whoever wrote the book. So when you're having a it's the same thing with when you go to a vending machine and you put the money in and you push the button, the machine is not experiencing, it's not having a conversation. It's not hearing language of, oh, he wants a Dr. Pepper, I'm going to give him a Dr. Pepper. It's just, it's an inanimate object. And the point of it.
So guys, so Brian, I just looked it up real quick. John Searle, come at me. You're still alive. So if this makes it to you, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I'm obviously not well read on this thing, but Brian, I just hit like a Harvard page or Stanford page. There's 5 solid critical responses to this. So this isn't like a perfectly accepted theory. I'm just reading what they said at Stanford. And it says here the arguments are largely around semantics, the philosophy of language, and theories of consciousness. So I mean, we're dipping our toe into a place where, classically trained philosophers are arguing about this.
Yeah, I think.
But you think I'm wrong? I get it, and I think this is a shit thought experiment.
And you're introducing needless complexity to a simple illustration. But the point is, I mean, that last part, I think, is the crux. They're delving into philosophy of consciousness
and language. And I think I have a very different view on language than you because of my behavioral slant.
Well, then take the language part out of it. You could
But
have
that's what
another
this
analogy
is.
with
But this is all
let's
about
say
language.
let's say a cookbook. Say you're making a recipe straight from out a cookbook.
Okay.
And you're not a classically trained chef. You have
Right.
absolutely no idea how to make food for anything.
Sure.
You follow a recipe step by step and you make,
An
a
amazing
super
dish.
dish.
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't mean you know how to cook.
Correct.
You just follow directions.
Right.
Which is essentially what a computer does. It doesn't understand what it's being told. It just does what it's told. And it outputs what you're wanting.
But so again, I don't know why I'm in nitpick mode, but if I'm reading a cookbook and I'm following the rules or the directions and it says I have to, flambe this, I have to know what the hell flambe is before I can flambe it.
Yeah,
when it says
that can be programmed.
When it says fold in the butter, I have to know how to fold in butter. Right. So, by the time you're done, you do know how to cook.
So you just want to argue about the language semantics.
That's literally what we're talking about is the language.
Let me ask you something, Matt. Let me ask you something, Matt. Can machines think?
No.
Why?
I don't know. I don't have a canned answer for it, but they don't think. They only follow code.
They follow directions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a canned answer on that. Like I don't have some like perfectly scripted paragraph. That was the point that I was trying to make earlier about thinking like a computer versus thinking like a human.
But the computer's not thinking.
I know, and humans are always thinking. So in the Chinese room thing, that guy's still thinking like a human.
Are we thinking?
If we're real.
The point you're missing.
People listening might not think we're thinking.
Right. The point of the Chinese room,
or are we just following directions based on how we're programmed?
It depends on if you follow John Calvin or not.
And we keep on. Oh boy, we keep getting so much data that expands our ability to process that data, so we think we're thinking.
Wait, what?
Damn, I need to hit the blunt again, Doc.
So are we thinking?
Right.
Or are we just taking in data and just following directions?
Well, that goes
programmed early.
Well, that goes back to the earliest philosophers, right? Like, do we exist? Like, I think, therefore I am, right? If you sit down and think about that, you're thinking. Like by you asking that question, all of us going, instantly you're thinking. Like that's what that is. So I mean, that unless we're going to get all the way down to what is a thought and what is reality, like I think we have to. That's one of those deals. I think that you have to just accept and move on. Otherwise, the conversation's circular, right?
Well, that's the point of this conversation is because we lack those definitions. We don't understand the dimensions of the discussion at all as a society, as a church. These questions are going to be forced upon us by emerging technology, while we've been emotionally conditioned by our stories to think of them a certain way. We haven't really thought it through rationally.
I agree with that completely.
There's a passage here from Sam Harris that I think would be it's worth reading. It's kind of lengthy if you'll indulge me, but I think it'll be profitable for the discussion.
Lengthy? How many pages?
A page and a half.
I'll read.
I could have been halfway done by now. I'm going to do it. You're going to like it. This is from Sam Harris's The End of Faith, page 208 in the chapter on experiments.
Link will be in the description, folks, if you want to find the book.
He writes, where there is much to be said against a naive conception of a soul that is independent of the brain, the place of consciousness in the natural world is very much an open question. The idea that brains produce consciousness is little more than an article of faith among scientists at present, and there are many reasons to believe that the methods of science will be insufficient to either prove or disprove it. Inevitably, scientists treat consciousness as a mere attribute of certain large-brained animals. The problem, however, is that nothing about a brain, when surveyed as a physical system, declares it to be a bearer of that peculiar interior dimension that each of us experiments as consciousness in his own case. Every paradigm that attempts to shed light upon the frontier between consciousness and unconsciousness, searching for the physical difference that makes the phenomenal one, relies upon subjective reports to signal that an experimental stimulus has been observed. The operational definition of consciousness, therefore, is reportability. But consciousness and reportability are not the same. Is a starfish conscious? No science that conflates consciousness with reportability will deliver an answer to this question. To look for consciousness in the world on the basis of its outward signs is the only thing that we can do. To define consciousness in terms of its outward signs, however, is a fallacy. Computers of the future, sufficiently advanced to pass the Turing test, will offer up a wealth of self-report. But will they be conscious? If we don't already know, their eloquence on the matter will not decide the issue. Consciousness may be a far more rudimentary phenomenon than our living creatures in their brains, and there appears to be no obvious way of ruling out such a thesis experimentally. Almost done. And so while we may know many things about ourselves in anatomical, physiological, and evolutionary terms, we currently have no idea why it is like something to be what we are. The fact that the universe is illuminated where you stand, the fact that your thoughts and moods and sensations have a qualitative character is an absolute mystery, rivaled only by the mystery famously articulated by the philosopher Schelling, that there should be anything at all in this universe rather than nothing. The problem is that our experience of brains as objects in the world leaves us perfectly insensible to the reality of consciousness, while our experience as brains grants us knowledge of nothing else. Given this situation, it is reasonable to conclude that the domain of our subjectivity constitutes a proper and essential sphere of investigation into the nature of the universe, as some facts will be discovered only in consciousness in first-person terms or not discovered at all.
So, I mean, the TLDR of that is we don't know what consciousness is, and it's a fool's errand to try to define it.
I would leave out that last part, but it's well, I wouldn't say Sam Harris's point is that it's a fool's errand. It's that it can only be experienced, it can only be known subjectively, and the takeaway from that is that, you know, we don't know what consciousness is in objective, empirical, scientific terms. We only know about it because we're conscious. Right. So if we ever did somehow create a thinking machine, how would we know about it? We wouldn't.
It'll tell us.
It'll tell us, but
we have to trust it at the same time. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm totally cool with that. It's kind of like, you know, the legal definition of porn. You know it when you see it, right?
But whether or not we do that is entirely, it depends entirely on the philosophical presuppositions you bring to the question.
I agree.
If
I agree with that completely. And go ahead. I know where you're going, but go ahead.
If the idea that we can, like, well, so far, we don't know how to reverse engineer consciousness. We don't know how to reverse engineer the human brain to create consciousness.
Right.
Even where we know consciousness exists. The idea that we'll be able to create it by artificial means is, frankly, a religious idea. It's not a
religious, like lowercase r religious idea, not a
right. It's an atheistic religious idea. It's a matter of faith. It's predicated on the belief that there's nothing transcendent about consciousness. There's no God needed to create life, that consciousness itself is just an emergent property of mechanistic processes that in theory we could reproduce artificially. There's a book published in 1990.
I know. So I want to leapfrog because you're essentially getting at the point of consciousness exists because of our soul. which what makes us unique specifically from a computer, but from other animals. But I would argue that are redheads conscious?
Yes, because they have all of our souls with every freckle.
Oh, dang.
They're hyper conscious.
That's right.
Matt's picking on me for
no, I wasn't. I mean, I knew where you were going, and I get it.
I thought you were taking a dig at my redhead streak from 30 years ago.
Oh no, I wasn't even going there. I was just taking a shot at gingers in general. It's fun.
Well,
it's like the single like accepted racism in the world unilaterally.
Yeah.
We're all allowed to make fun of gingers.
In England, they're called gingers.
Gingers?
The ginga.
I know you were joking, but just as a point of clarification, the words translated as soul in the Bible, in Greek it's from psyche, and in Hebrew it's nephesh, which essentially just means mind. So like it means the same thing as consciousness.
So serious question. Do either of those two definitions or words, are they predicated on the what's the right language? The two parts or the three parts? You know what I'm talking about? The whole body, mind, and soul.
Well,
or no, it's soul, spirit. What is that? You know,
well, it's soul, spirit, and body.
Yeah, soul, spirit.
Spirit is from pneuma or ruach, which both just mean breath or wind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's arguable if they even thought of them as separate
or not. Yeah,
right.
I watched the Heiser short on it. That's so like I'm an expert, right? I stayed at a Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
So Andrew, or for those that might not know what we're talking about, most Christians, and I guess maybe all religious people, have kind of always thought of the human existence as having three parts. There's the body yourself, and then there's a soul, and then a spirit, and they're separate. And then there's people that say there's only two. There's the soul, and then the body, and the spirit is the soul. And that was what I was getting at, is I didn't know if any of those words required or pre-assumed three parts versus two parts. It was just a technical question to understand where we were going with that.
I would say three parts, but not in the sense people talk about. Like there's nothing about the uses of those words that indicate a consciousness that exists independently of the body or survives the death of the body. When in the book of Genesis, when it mentions God creating the living creatures, the Hebrew is living nephesh, or she nephesh. So to the question of, do animals have souls? Well, I don't know what that means. We don't have souls. We are souls, and animals are also souls. They're living. They're ke nephesh. There's a verse in Leviticus that mentions how to handle a dead body, and it says a dead nephesh. So the person, so it just means nephesh typically means soul in the sense of a self,
a living thing, a living organism.
Yeah, an organism, or a self, or the mind.
Well, and that goes back to like, isn't there some couple of verse where God is referred to as, the giver of breath or something like that? Isn't there something to that?
Well, when he creates Adam, it says that he
breathed life into
Adam's nostrils, and he became a living being.
Yeah,
which is central to our discussion here. Is, does inanimate dust become animate just with
the breath of life,
just by its own
processes? Are we just like clay golems until God breathes life into us, and then we become humans?
And we've talked about in previous discussions, we talked about I've gave my little TED talk about how there's really only two religions in the world.
Right.
For the audience at home who might not have heard that, and for Andrew, if you're wanting to run down, basically you have
the universe.
The difference between universe is in what's eternal. Is it in monotheism, God alone is eternal, and the universe is contingent upon him. In Eastern religion, or what we might for shorthand call Eastern religion, the universe alone is eternal, and all consciousness and life within it are emergent properties of the universe. And so in Hinduism, the thinking, and also this is kind of important, in the book of Genesis, God creates by separating opposites. He distinguishes light from dark to make time, up from down to create space, dry land from water to create earth. He separates each of the animals, proliferate each according to their kind. He
all in
separates
6
male and
days.
female.
This is a working dude.
But the point of it is
24-hour days.
existence started out as formless and empty. And then it was differentiation. And at each stage, God said, it is good. And at the end of it, he said, it is very good. In Hinduism, where they believe that the universe, everything that emerged from the universe, we're all ultimately one. And the goal is to, they believe we're on a constant cycle of samsara, life, death, and rebirth, and constant reincarnation. And this is a curse to be escaped. The goal is to achieve enlightenment by realizing that your individual identity is an illusion, and that you're one with Brahman.
Everything is all one. Yeah.
Right. And when you actualize this understanding and see past the illusion, then you escape the cycle and you're absorbed back into the one. So it's the opposite of what the Bible says is good. What the Bible says is good, this says is ultimately bad and to be escaped. And the goal is to go back into being formless and empty.
I just had another thought about I got to cut you off, Brian, because this I'm not trying to be completely funny and flip, but if God created everything in hard days, and 24 hours and 7 days is perfect, then why do we have to have leap years?
True.
What, God couldn't figure out how to round that off evenly?
Is that it? Are you serious?
I'm being dead serious. if you're reading Genesis literally as a young earth creationist, and you believe that he created the earth, the universe in 6 days, and then on the 7th day he rested, that means that you believe God created the 7-day week. And if God created the 7-day week, and the way we divide them because of years, we're left with hanging seconds. They had to add a leap second not too long ago.
Well,
because
I'm not a young
the
earth
calendar is
creationist.
Imperfect. No, I'm asking those out there. Somebody who is one, how do you reconcile leap years?
But if I were a young earth creationist, which I'm not, so this is not a problem for me, but if I was, I would say that the idea of a solar year is a human, like God created the sun, moon, and stars to be for times and seasons and years. That's the cosmic clockwork.
Right.
But the denominations are human constructs. Humans decided to make it a solar year, and to
okay, like, but they're still, the week is still biblical. The week,
sure,
the month and the year might not be, but the week is. But we don't have 52 weeks. Like, it doesn't round. We have
we just don't know what that week is. So the construct is, well, we'll just say that this is, and we'll go ahead and say, but the praise you on the 7th day.
But hang on, because the early biblical year was 364 days, right?
It was 360 days.
I thought it was 364.
It was a lunar calendar based on the new moon, which appeared roughly every 30 to 29 days. And so there's reason to believe they had a separate agricultural calendar that was solar, as distinct from the religious calendar, which was lunar, because it was based on the new moon. But
it's a rabbit hole. I this obviously just popped in my head just now. I just was, as you were talking, I was like sitting there thinking, I was the meme with the chick with the shapes and the geometry flying around and stuff.
Well, thank you for that, Matt.
Hey. Thanks for the detail.
Hey, somebody that could help me out with that. Like, what's going on with leap years and leap seconds?
I don't know
how to get back now.
If I were a young
I need the GPS.
If I were a young earth creationist addressing that question, I would say that the burden is on you to explain why that's an imperfection at all.
Well, that's a cop out of an answer.
Is it?
No, nobody come at me with that answer. That's a weak answer.
I stand by it.
Well, stand by it then.
Why is it a flaw in the Like, why does it all have to fit together perfectly?
Yeah,
and
why does it have to be
consistently?
perfectly symmetrical?
Because
Yeah,
it is.
it's a
But it's
feature, not a bug, dog.
It's a
Is
feature, a leap year. He's like, congratulations, you're welcome.
I mean, maybe he had some purpose for leap years or intercalary months, or
what do you do when you get to the top? You go over the top. What the fuck does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
but so Hindus think that the individual identity is an illusion, where Buddhists believe that identity itself is an illusion. It's not just that the self is indistinguishable from Brahman, but the self itself is an illusion, and the goal is non-being. So in the movie The Creator, I think it's no coincidence that they're all Buddhists. You actually have robots at Buddhist temples wearing robes, doing the chants and stuff, which speaks to the.
Do they do kung fu?
There's some hand-to-hand combat going on. They did. It was more like a John Wick sort of like gunfighting. They had like
Shaolin?
Robot cops.
So,
I think it was more like, I think it was in the Philippines, so it would have been like
Ali or something.
Kali, but
to me, Brian, it sounds like your hang up on the movie is the social part of everybody trying to like legislate stuff to the or the bad guys are the ones that want to legislate things for the AIs, but I don't this is just me, my ideas and stuff and where I see AI going. I don't think we get to that point in the movie where we have bipedal human looking robots that are AIs running around.
You don't think we ever get that far?
I don't think I think we get further than that. I don't think it goes in that direction, if that makes sense.
The sex robots are going to disagree with you.
Well, the sex robots already exist, and I think that they're already going to put all the OnlyFans models out of business with the quickness. So I think
that's a hot take.
Well, I think a lot of dads are going to be happy about that. Because I mean, if you have an AI in your pocket right now what
are these websites for science?
Dad's going to be happy.
The link will not be in the description below. No, he's saying because daughters won't be doing it.
Because your daughter's not going to be on OnlyFans anymore.
I know what he meant. I having 2 daughters.
Okay. I'm just saying.
I'm pretty sure neither are OnlyFans. Can't be positive.
Well, I mean, but my concern isn't specifically. My concern isn't specifically humanoid robots walking around with human rights in real time and suing me for as if it's a person. Or my concern is how humanity collectively responds to this, and if we haven't thought these things through, we like I said before, we don't arrive at our beliefs by rational processes. We're kind of emotionally conditioned into them. That time is going to arrive when I think specifically Christians as a church, we need to think through this stuff. We need to come to an understanding on what it would mean if we're dealing with AI as if they are people. If people are, and it's not just that, but it's the distinction between reality and simulation itself. Like we already can't, we don't know if we're dealing with an actual. There's a conspiracy theory out there that the entire internet is an AI simulation. Like there are no people out there. I don't believe it, but I think it does raise interesting questions about.
Well, that's a weird theory though, because I mean, I've met people off the internet.
Well, there's tons of thought experiments, right? Where, we're in a simulation right now, or
And in a lot of ways we are. This kind of plays into, in our conversation about occultism a few weeks ago, we talked about a principle from Western occult tradition, summed up in the word abracadabra. The term predates the Kabbalah, but the Kabbalists developed it and it's an Aramaic phrase that means "as I speak, I create," and it conveys the act of God speaking the universe into existence. He says, "Let there be," and it was. And then Adam participated with God's process of creation, not by creating ex nihilo, not by creating out of nothing, but by naming the animals. And he introduced a primitive system of taxonomy by doing so. And the Kabbalistic exploration of this concept, they observed that we, like much of human society, the economy, governments, institutions, art, national epics, stories, these are all much of what makes up our life as humans is a construct of language. So in that sense, it is, we do live in a simulation, and this is so, we're so familiar with this that we don't even think about it. It's like fish thinking about being wet. But we've taken it to the point now that we believe that, all of reality is socially constructed. If you create a culture in which boys can become girls and girls become boys, people think that's real. People don't make the distinction between that kind of a subjective perception. But it's not even that they don't make a distinction.
But that doesn't, all of those things as you said doesn't lead to we're in a simulation.
Well, hold on. I'm not saying that. My point is that we've come to a point where they think that, internal subjective perception is reality. And if that's the case, and if AI is generating things for us that we're interacting with, and subjectively, if I really feel like my robot girlfriend loves me, well, isn't that just as good as a real woman?
And I think that's the key, just as good, where the reality doesn't have to match up anymore. I think where we're going is scary generationally, because what generations from now, when people don't remember how we got here, when people don't remember where AI started, and all they know is that there's a machine that knows more than them. There's a machine that can give them every answer that they're looking for. There is a prompt that can give them essentially the secrets of the universe. And once you have a source that gives you the secret of the universe, don't you sort of start treating that source as if it's superior to you? And if it's superior to you, isn't it worth worship? And then if you start worshiping it, it becomes its own religion and its own thing. And have you seen the TV show C on Apple TV with Jason Momoa? I didn't
finish it, but I've watched some of it.
So basically, there was some kind of war or apocalypse, and everybody became blind, or they were forced underground. Everyone became blind, and when they emerged, nobody could see. So then the religion came.
It's like Plato's allegory of the cave, it sounds like.
And if you can see, then it means that you're kind of a demon, right? So seeing, being able to see things with your eyes is evil, and they built an entire religion on that. So if you are able to see, you have to act like you can't, and then it just kind of goes as people evolve back into sight. The show kind of goes, but it's just because we're so quick to lose knowledge. And it goes back to even having technology that makes you not think anymore. Well, so later on down the road, we're not going to be thinking, and the machines is going to endure probably. And here we are at the feet of technology.
So I get what you're saying, and I hadn't thought of it that way. That's pretty cool. The one thing I would
Are you talking to Dre?
To Dre, about what he just said. I mean, I hadn't thought of that.
I thought of it just as we're sitting here.
Yeah, no, that was cool. Two things. One, that's kind of what I was trying to say earlier to Brian about will we ever make general intelligence? And my point was, point of that asymptotic line was, we'll get close enough that what does it matter, right? Because if it looks like a duck, acts like quacks like a duck, you know what I mean? Like, who cares that it's actually a swan? It's like, it's duck-like, like, shoot it. You know what I mean? Right. It's a witch, it floats, you know, kind of thing. Like, to me, there's some level of, is it AI or not? It's like, well, what does it matter? Can it do all the things that you would need a human to do mostly? And it fills that void for whatever reason you need it to do that, then like, cool. To create a test just for the sake of a test seems foolish to me. That's what I was trying to say earlier. So the first part of what Dre just said kind of helped me more concisely answer that earlier point.
That kind of, I had another half of the thought I was making when Dre mentioned worshiping AI, but your point kind of brings me back to that. If you haven't thought these things through, and the simulation is just as good as a real thing, but also if you don't believe God exists and consciousness itself is just an emergent property of mechanistic processes, there's nothing transcendent about it, then the simulation really is no different than the real thing.
Remember the sequence in The Matrix, right? When the dude's like, plug me back in.
But
right, because he's like, I know it's a simulation and I don't care. Like, it was better than what I'm dealing with out here, so I'd rather eat a steak and live that nice life because it triggers my happy stuff in my brain.
Do you not see how degrading that is to human dignity? If we treat machines as equal to humans?
Nobody said anything about treating them equally, dude. You're making a weird jump. I was responding to a specific question. Will we ever create artificial intelligence?
We're on the path to that, though. We are on the path to treat them equally, and then that path leads to us treating them as superior to us.
I get that.
Right.
To me, but these are separated things. Is what I'm trying to get at. Like, this one question of will we make artificial intelligence or not? That's a separate conversation to what should we then do with that artificial intelligence. Like, I'm just addressing it. Like, my point was if it's like 99% artificial intelligence, cool, it's artificial intelligence. Like, what's gained by requiring the Turing test to be solved is what I was trying to get at.
Or even 70%, right?
And my answer to that, though, is that if you don't already know the answer to the question, will we create machines that can think? At no point will you know that answer. And where you come down philosophically right now is going to determine how you answer that question. If you believe that God exists and that consciousness itself is something transcendent, and not just the emergent property of mechanistic, materialistic processes, then you know that we never will. That's never going to happen. We'll never create machines that can think, unless we solve the brain-body problem that Sam Harris was talking about, and figure out in scientific terms what consciousness actually is. Right. But again, whether or not that ever happens is entirely a philosophical, faith-based question.
I agree, and I think
but if you don't believe God exists, but there will come a time when we need practical answers to these questions. We're going to have to figure out what to do as a society over, like, is it going to be, are you going to be charged with murder if you unplug a server and an AI dies?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real question that's going to come up if we don't figure it out beforehand.
Andrew, what was that Netflix series you and I both watched where the rich people could live forever by injecting their consciousness into another body?
Altered Carbon.
Altered Carbon. Yeah. You guys
Get
ever
Out.
watch that?
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's another. This is the other side of this, right?
Yeah.
Well, those aren't AI though. Those are that actually is
Right.
the human consciousness.
Right.
But they've
Supposedly.
But they were moving them
Yeah.
into synthetics,
Allegedly.
right? Weren't they they were moving them into synth bodies. And then that was a different question, is if you could take the human consciousness and put it into a synthetic house, is that a person or not?
Are you still you?
Right. That's the other side of the same conversation.
Now,
Well-
I want to go back to what Dre was talking about on the worshiping the AI stuff, but because I mean, we've kind of already had that technological leap in our lifetime with the internet and Google, I would say. Because I mean, before the internet, I would say, that's, from Stone Age way past the Bronze Age. Like pre-internet, you're just as smart as you're gonna be studying, but post-internet with Google, I mean, essentially, you're one of the smartest human beings on Earth because you have a library of all human intelligence in your pocket at all times with your phone. And I mean, I would say we all use it. I wouldn't say we all worship the internet at that point. So I feel like in the future it'll just be a tool that is used. I don't necessarily know if we'll worship it. That's why I say um I don't think we'll ever get to
But
the
Google
point.
can't talk to you right now. What if Google
Right.
could talk to you and you could have a conversation with Google?
I mean,
That could be different.
I still don't think so the crucial part, like the movie that Brian's talking about, is human beings, and he was saying that humans behave emotionally. The only reason that I feel like humans would legislate for AI rights and things like that is if we have that connection that we see, like he was saying, the robots with human-like bipedal bodies that look like us and have emotions like, or at least look like they have emotions like
they
us.
can simulate emotions like us.
Yeah. Like I think that would elicit some kind of emotional response from people to want to like legislate something towards that. I don't think we get to that part. Uh, I don't think that happens. I think
What about a sex
AI.
bot?
I mean, they already exist. Like,
And
uh,
they look and
no, I'm not talking about
feel.
like a real life one. I'm talking about like, so I've told Matt, I haven't told y'all. Microsoft released a technology like last month called AutoGen, and nobody made a big deal about it, and I don't really understand why, because it's kind of just as groundbreaking as OpenAI's ChatGPT. AutoGen essentially is a framework for different AIs or the same AIs to work together. So you can essentially build a dev team of AIs that sit there and talk to each other. So for instance, the demonstration that was given was a guy prompts AutoGen, which had two AIs. It had a Python AI and ChatGPT. And it used the Python AI as development and ChatGPT as like the test and the CEO of the dev team, pretty much. And it was prompted with, give me the futures or whatever. Give me like a what's it called? A graph of Tesla versus Microsoft in this span of time, which was like the last month. Well, ChatGPT is not hooked up to the internet currently, or well, they say it's not. And it can't go out into the
Allegedly.
internet, right? Essentially, it can't go out into the internet and find the information that you're looking for. So it talked to the Python AI and said, hey, I can't reach the internet. Make a script that scrapes those websites to give me that information. And so it generated a script that did that. And it says, here's the information that you asked for. what do you want me to do with it? So ChatGPT was like, okay, I can do something with this. Now make a script that goes out and finds graphics for this graph. And they sit there and talk back and forth to
work around a
to
shortcoming, basically,
to get around me not being hooked up to the internet. So, I mean, essentially the genie's kind of out of the bottle already on the stuff. I'm not going to say it's like full on Terminator mode yet or anything like that, but I don't see it I don't see it essentially like us growing that crazy emotional attachment, so where we start legislating over stuff like that. I see human beings using it as a tool for bad and us legislating stuff towards the bad use of AI, if that makes sense.
I think that we have a tendency to defer to authority. And if we keep losing people that have this authority and only machines do because we just stop learning,
because we've abdicated it to them and told them,
I mean,
go create policies and regulate this.
We're so credentialists in everything that we do today, right? They trust the science. And then there's a guy that says, I am the science, which means you only trust him, right? But as soon as we, as you say, abdicated to just machines, then they're going to be that authority, and then they're going to be the ones actually legislating us.
That's probably a lot more realistic than the
I
worship.
see that happening.
And then I guess you could argue that then are we splitting hairs about who's worship? What is it, worship, or is it
sure?
Just, are you following the king kind of thing, right?
And I use worship loosely.
Yeah,
right?
you didn't mean like bow down, but you meant do what you were told and obey.
But you are going to do what you're told, because there's also going to be real life threats.
Yeah,
there's going to be real viruses that can be released into the world.
So Dre, I don't know that we're far from what you're saying there, because think about, like, everybody likes to talk about Facebook and, the moderators and all of that, but so much of that is scripted, right? So if you do something wrong on Facebook, it's basically a bot that catches you and puts you in timeout. And there's no way to you can't call. There is no Facebook help desk. I don't know if you guys know this or not. There is like no way for B. Irvin to talk to a human at Facebook.
Not B. Irvin.
Not B. Irvin.
True.
There's not a way for not. That's double negative. So yeah,
that's not my identity, guys. But you can't find me.
Like, so that's already a thing, right? Like you say the wrong phrase or put the wrong image on your Facebook, and you get put in timeout, and your account gets suspended. And if you do it too many times, your account is permanently revoked. So to a certain degree, that's already happening.
And if culture continues down that path, it's going to be the norm everywhere,
right?
And we won't know the difference.
And I think that was something Brian was going to earlier, where he was talking about how, we don't make, conscious, logical decisions. We look to be told how to feel about things. And we've all accepted that Facebook just gets to dictate to us what we can and can't do. And everybody's just kind of shrugged their shoulders and go, okay, except for those few patriots out there at Rumble, right? Like, with the exception of that kind of a scenario, we're all just going along. And so it's already happened to a certain degree. And even though people like us will be like, hey, and then you just go back to do it, and to doing whatever they say.
And they legislate it in chunks, right? So I mean, just recently, with the whole gender affirming in California, of course, that's not a popular thing across the nation. So the governor of California just vetoed it.
Right.
So that was good. So, which is,
or how about that thing that Russell Brand's been talking about with the whole what's it called, the internet trustworthy. You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
But my point is that it goes out there, and then they're like, okay, they're not ready for that, so we'll reel it back.
So,
and then eventually a law such as something that nobody agrees with today, 2 years from now,
because they floated the balloon to see how hard we're going to push back, but then it's already out there. Yeah, I'm with you.
Now we'll just tailor it so that it'll be okay with them, and a machine who can read that feedback faster and better is going to come up with that solution a lot quicker.
Think about the, you know, all of the data that the databases and the data lakes from all of the polling that's done, right? So these polling systems are out there asking people their opinions on all these things, right? So it's learning in real time how much people, how strongly on a scale of 1 to 10 do you care about this and that, right? And they're like, oh, okay, very good, right? And then to your point, as that number moves, they're like, hey, once they're within a 4, they won't push back anymore. When they're a 5 or higher, they'll push back. But the minute they fall to 4, we can change that law.
So then all the evil people that Andrew was just talking about, we're going to have an elite squad of people, just a
computer
small
scientists.
Number.
Yeah, and they're already
or
using,
at least guys with a pistol to a computer scientist's brain, right?
Well, and they're already using bots to try to move the Overton window.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. Yeah, that's exactly what.
Like when people say that Twitter is not real life, when a lot of that stuff is real life, but they use just enough not real life to get people to change their mind, because we're not rational creatures.
Whenever there's a movie being advertised on Facebook, I always go down to the comment section, and it's always like the same kind of like contentless enthusiasm for it. Can't wait to see this movie.
Yeah.
I loved so and so in this movie, and it's just this. Nobody's like crapping on it. Nobody's like, man, what, this stupid movie again? Except for me, but it always goes to the bottom,
and it gets deleted right away.
Brian just cracks his knuckles and he's like, time to get to work.
But, I mean, it's apparent just when you watch the news, right? You can change the channel, and they're literally saying the exact same thing as if they're reading from an AI script.
Right. Well, like think about like when The Sound of Freedom came out, right?
Right.
Right-wing extremist fantasy, whatever all that language was they kept using. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Revenge fantasy or whatever it was. Yeah. Whatever weird language these. Talking about movies, I just watched The Pope's Exorcist this weekend. I thought it was a really cool movie. I thought it was really fun as an Exorcist movie can be, but it was worth the watch, right? Well, I just happened to see it pop up in my Facebook feed, you know, shocker. And to Brian's point, I'm a comment junkie, right? So I jump in the comments, and there was all these people saying weird things about it that didn't make any sense. Like there was criticism and feedback on the movie that didn't align to the movie. They were like, it was woke. There was nothing woke about it. Like exorcism is like anti-woke. You know, it's like super old school conservative.
People are trying to call the Vatican woke now.
Say again, Dre.
Is people trying to call the Vatican woke now?
Well,
so it
Pope
means
Francis
that Catholicism.
This Pope wasn't. Not the Pope in this movie. I don't want to spoil it because it's a relatively new movie. But this Pope was a G. Like, like this Pope was kind of he was cool. And the main character was awesome. So it's not Spartacus, it's
Russell
Crowe. It's Maximus, yeah. Decimus Maximus. He's hilarious in the movie. His character is just it's fun. Like it's a fun exorcist movie. So I recommend everybody go watch it. I'll link will be in the description. But it was just weird, Brian, to your point. There was a whole bunch of like body kinds of feedback. And I think they said that because it's a religious movie. So let's say it was woke.
Yeah.
And then that'll get people fired up, you know, and it was like, I don't think you know what woke means. And there was a lot of them. Those comments say, and then there was bots responding to bots. It was a really weird kind of thing.
They don't want conservatives finding a movie that appeals to conservatives and rallying around it, because then that interferes with them moving the window where they want it.
Well, again, I don't know that it was a conservative movie. This one specifically, it was religious in nature because of the subject matter.
Was it pro-Catholic? Did it portray the Catholic Church in a positive light?
It did both at the same time, and I can't explain that without giving away the main thrust of the movie.
But that's my point.
What it showed was part of the church was being governed by younger people that weren't as supernaturally aware as the old guard. So it wasn't so much woke; it was young. It was
I don't
just
think that
because the
Well, it was depicting the young generation as being naive and not as enlightened.
Naive. That's what it was
the
showing.
elder
It was,
generation.
That's what it was. It wasn't woke. It was naive.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite. Yeah. Which is why the people who want more woke movies, who want to move the Overton window farther left, they don't want a movie that depicts the patriarchy in a positive light, that depicts, the wisdom of an older generation.
But the older generation were the good guys. So that's my point. This wasn't woke. We're saying the same thing, but
it doesn't matter if the movie's woke or not. If conservatives rally around the film, then it's automatically gone, right? So it could be like Sound of Freedom is a pretty universal thing, right? We're talking about kids being saved.
My point.
Most people don't like the idea of kids being sold into sex trafficking. Like that's a good litmus test.
Yeah.
By the way, if you like that, like, go away. Like, don't listen to the show anymore. Or actually send me an email and give me your address, and let's have a conversation about it.
Go ahead and dox me and show up.
Keep listening and let every word we say sink in, actually. No, what I was saying was that this was robots recognizing this movie is not consistent with our programmer's agenda. And so we need to discredit it for the people who would like it by calling it woke.
Yeah, but like I said, it was just weird because it didn't fit. That's the only point I was trying to make. Is I think bots just pick shit at random and try to make something out of nothing so they can make traction.
There was an important point I wanted to make about AI and the religious connotations.
Well, damn it, man! It's been 2 hours. Make your damn point.
Andrew's having flashbacks.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the question of whether a machine can think, it's largely a religious question.
That's an opinion. That's a take.
Am I wrong?
Finish it though. Take your take.
But
have a take. Don't suck.
That's kind of the flip side of a common atheistic objection to religion, is you can't prove God's existence scientifically. They don't say that explicitly.
No, they do.
So
they do.
They do. No, they do.
Though.
But,
I hear it.
But what we're talking about with God is a consciousness who exists external to humanity. You can't prove you exist scientifically, according to Sam Harris himself in The End of Faith, that other consciousness exists other than your own is outside of the realm of science. All of like the very empathy that these movies are playing upon, they want you to empathize with a machine as if it's a person. They're basically inverting the prejudices that they bring to the question of God. Because you can't prove God scientifically, it's not a valid belief according to them, but you also can't prove the existence of AI, of a thinking machine or any consciousness outside of your own scientifically. So it's how you approach this question is kind of a Rorschach test for what you believe about God.
I think I agree with that.
Sure.
I think that's a better way to put it. Absolutely. I think 99% of the time a person is going to have an opinion about artificial intelligence that comes down aligned to whether or not they believe in God. I think that's probably a really good way to put that.
What if eventually we could? Does that make us God?
If we can create AI?
Yes.
That's an interesting point you raise, which I've been wanting to talk about this.
You're welcome.
Did you guys want to wrap up? Am I?
No, I mean,
if you've got another point, we're coming up on 2 hours. So,
well, this will be like 10 minutes ish
of straight talking.
No, I'm factoring in your interruption.
Okay.
It's called It's a book called The Physics of Immortality. It was written in 1994 by Frank Tipler and John Darrow.
Links in the description.
A couple of theoretical physicists, where they lay out what's known as the what they call what's that?
Andrew just got a little shiver when you said they're theoretical physicists.
There's so many thought experiments that theoretical physicists dream up.
Well, this one you'll like.
It's in the description of their title.
I know.
I better like it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I don't like it, but it's interesting and relevant to the discussion, and it speaks to the longer term ramifications of the issue. They believe that, according to Moore's law, no relation that I know
Like
of.
these guys got laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a lot of laws actually.
I got a whole city.
It's on my fridge. Lillian cannot
Right.
use the phone.
Did you hear what Andrew said?
He's got a whole city.
Yeah, you guys got laws. We got a whole damn city.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4th Street.
Right.
Well, in this city, there is a law that applies to everywhere, called Moore's law. That computing power doubles every year, which is mostly held true. According to this, they claim artificial general intelligence is inevitable.
Just based on Moore's law.
Right.
Okay.
Because they define themselves as materialist reductionists who regard human brains as just wet machinery and consciousness as the programming running on it. And it's only a matter of time before we reverse engineer it and recreate the same effect and create artificial general intelligence. When this happens, this will be the next step in human evolution. It will be alive, just in the same sense that we are alive, and therefore lay claim to the same rights and privileges as any sentient human being. Being alive and intelligent, it will be able to replicate itself and improve upon itself. And it will continue to do this long into the future, to the point that it will have mastered all the laws of physics, obtained all knowledge there is to have, which they define as, and when it achieves this, it will be, they call this the omega point, when this computer essentially becomes God. Being omniscient and omnipotent.
So that's crazy. So they're saying all of that, and not only could it happen, they say all of this is a foregone eventuality, period.
Yes.
That's a fascinating premise.
It's a hot take,
right? We won't be around to see it, but it's a hot take.
Well, but having done this, it will, and by the way, this is to answer the question of the riddle posed by fine tuning. Cosmic fine tuning is the observation by physicists. It sounds like a religious word. It sounds like something Christians and creationists would say. It's not. It's a physics term that observes that where it was always assumed that the parameters for the assumption was always what's known as naturalness, which is the idea that life is the inevitable result of the conditions of the universe because we're here. So it was always assumed that the parameters for life to exist must be very wide, a very likely event to happen
for us to fall into it,
because we're here,
which is the opposite of divine creation and
right.
On purpose, a purposeful design,
intelligent design. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
But fine tuning challenges that, because it's the observation that all of the fundamental constants of the universe had to be just precisely lined up in order to make conscious life possible. And I could go into examples.
I get it. No, we talk about it in the sports world. So it's like Dre, when we say, like, we got to see Ken Griffey Jr., Bo Jackson,
right? All
of these great athletes,
Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali.
It's fine tuning. Okay.
Yeah. So the observations of physicists over the past 100 years is that, contrary to expectation, life is actually a statistical miracle. We shouldn't be here, but we are.
Right.
And so their answer to that is what's known as the anthropic principle, which in its basic sense is the weak anthropic principle, which basically just says, well, we must live in the kind of universe that gives rise to conscious life. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here to notice that we're here. If we didn't, it'd be some other universe with no life, and we wouldn't
know about it. Right.
Yeah. And in Douglas Adams' book, I think is it whoever wrote the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. I think it's Douglas Adams. he uses the analogy that atheists love to repeat of a puddle marveling that it's puddle-like, that it has the specific contours to hold this puddle. And the joke being that if it was some other shaped puddle, it would be that puddle marveling that it's puddle-like, which is a terrible analogy, because the point of fine tuning is that if the puddle was shaped any other way, it wouldn't hold a puddle. There wouldn't be any life. And so, I don't know. That's
every time you say fine tuning, like the mental picture in my head is this. I was just,
yeah.
I
was actually having this conversation with someone.
Fine tuning, not broad tuning. This is like, you got to get to the freak band, but you got to get the noise out. You got to
right. But I mean, but I'm just, with the different scope, right? I'm just looking at the line. So, which is a lost art because the computer does it for you now.
Right.
True.
It tells you what to listen to. Tells you what to
fucking AI.
These are the stations you care about.
Andrew,
these are not the droids you're looking for.
Do you see what happens here? You see how this isn't my fault?
I just don't know where you're going. Do you subscribe to these physical theorists? Or...
Are you asking me?
Yes. Are you asking me?
No. I'm explaining. Okay, fine tuning is the issue I'm talking about. Like the universe has the appearance, and in Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, he discusses this about the phrase apparent design shows up a lot, not just in his writings, but in the writings of physicists talking about fine tuning.
Right. But that's it. So fine tuning is like the other side of physicists saying, give us the Big Bang, give us the one miracle, and then we can take it from there, kind of thing.
Right. It's a long string of miracles, starting with the Big Bang, and right up to us, like a long chain of them, including like the size of our moon, the shape of our red blood cells, because it's perfect for moving oxygen across the surface of the liquid. Yeah,
I need that miracle, but I don't believe in God.
What was the one I just saw? The way the human eye works, or the way that eyeballs work.
Irreducible complexity.
Say that again, Brian.
Irreducible complexity.
There's a whole, Andrew, I just ran into this the other day. There's this whole like scientific world that says that the way eyeballs work is so hyper complex that it's impossible for it to just happen by chance. And that essentially every living thing on Earth has eyeballs of some similar capability, and it's just too.
Yeah. I don't reject Darwinian evolution. As far as I'm aware, as a non-biologist, as a non-scientist, it's still the best scientific paradigm for the explanation of the proliferation of life. But it was developed before Darwin ever could see a cell. He had no idea
how complex the things were inside.
It is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's the subject of a book called Darwin's Black Box by Michael Behe, not the actor, who came up with the term irreducible complexity. And
he stopped the Terminator. Oh, not same guy.
He did. Yeah. He also, speaking of AI, he's also one of our greatest allies in the war against the machines, as it turns out.
As it turns out.
Yeah. But
we should all be naming our sons after him.
So you've probably heard about the multiverse hypothesis.
Sure.
This is basically this is the known as the strong anthropic principle. This is basically the anthropic principle says that because from what we observe, the odds of us being here are so astronomically unlikely that it's impossible, yet we're here. So there must be more to the picture that we're not seeing. We just have to look for that. The strong anthropic principle expands it out to say that we actually live in a multiverse where if a particle is zipping this way and forces are acting on it where it could zig that way or zag that way, the universe actually splits into two to accommodate each alternative. This is another term for this is the collapse of the wave function, which is a whole thing that I could explain, but I'm not going to because you'll get mad at me. But the point is, this is all like this idea of the multiverse. So basically, under the multiverse, everything that possibly can happen does happen. And this is a response to the observation of fine tuning. There's no way to test for it scientifically. It is technically science fiction, but they talk about this and as if it's a real possibility that explains things, which is really, I would argue, a religious position. But there's another one called the participatory anthropic principle, which is based on the observation effect, and I'm not going to get into that. But then there's the final anthropic principle, which is the subject of the physics of immortality.
Finally.
Yes.
Been a long 10 minutes, bro.
Their premise is that when the omega point is reached, this AI that is omniscient and omnipotent, having mastered the laws of physics
and everything, space-time,
will be able to go back in time to the start of the universe and so order conditions to bring about conscious life and its own creation.
So it's like a bootstrap paradox wrapped into AI.
Yeah. But
I'm pretty sure that the Anunnaki created their own AI, and that's us.
So
and then we're going to make an AI, and then
I just decided, I retract everything I said. We are in a simulation. That's all this is. This is just one big ass loop.
This is Anunnaki simulation.
Well, I mean, even just in regular physics, like theoretical physics, right? That you're talking about. We don't even need a multiverse for that to happen. We just need infinity to exist in reality. Like either infinite space or infinite time, one or the other. And all of that can happen.
Except we don't have infinite time.
Wow.
We only have 13.7 billion years, which is a long time by our human lifetime standards. It's not enough time.
Are you sure it's not 13.6 billion years?
But it continues to go that way infinitely.
Right.
As far as we know.
Supposedly. But allegedly.
Allegedly.
But what he's saying is that before the Big Bang was a thing.
What happened? What was before the Big Bang?
Well, no, before we had the Big Bang theory, before Lemaitre's primeval atom theory, before Einstein's relativity, which gave rise to the Big Bang theory, the steady state model was assumed that the universe has just always been here and always will be.
Right.
Therefore, we had infinite amount of time for things to fall out the way that they did.
Right.
So when we figured, and when the Big Bang theory was first proposed, it was ridiculed. That's the Big Bang theory is a pejorative. It was offered as the primeval atom theory. It was offered by a guy named George Lemaitre, who happened to be a Catholic priest and a physics professor. It was ridiculed for being too close to the book of Genesis, because the idea of a beginning of the universe, well, that was a religious idea. Only quaint, naive religious people believed in that. But with that now established, now we have infinitely less time to deal with. I mean, 13.7 billion years is a long time, but it's a lot less than infinity, and not enough time for
a lot less than infinity. I like that.
Yeah.
We have ways to go. We got time.
And so anyway, the reason I brought that up is because it ties into a possible reading of the Book of Revelation, where the beast receives a fatal wound to his head and yet lives, and then the second beast sets an image of the first beast that has the power of breath, and it slays those who refuse to worship the image of the beast. So it's alive in some sense, and it has discernment, and there's a lot that can be unpackaged there. But we're already 2 hours in, and I'll just leave it there.
I think Brian finishes thoughts about as well as Prince finishes songs.
Purple Rain, specifically.
They just go on. I mean, it's brilliant, just like Prince, right?
And it all ties together and it weaves into the next thought.
This is a compliment, Brian.
Just
so you know, and being that I'm speaking to Matt.
Yep.
And he would agree.
So you have to know, Brian, that Dre and I have had many arguments about who the greatest singer person of all time is, and Dre is squarely in the Michael Jackson camp, and
I've been privy to those. You're explaining this like we haven't been friends for 30 years. And
I just making sure you know.
Conversations.
I just don't need you offended.
But the Purple Rain soundtrack is maybe the greatest single album of all time, and it's just one long ass song. There's actually no breaks. I don't think on any of them.
Maybe not.
I have to go back and listen to it and just to pay attention to the breaks in the song, but like they don't break. It's just like and then it ramps back up again.
So Andrew, sir.
Andrew, Prince, Michael Jackson, pick.
Jeez.
Go.
Oh man.
I mean,
I'm not the subject matter expert.
That's good. Is there anything that you do want to pimp out or shout out while we got you on here?
No, I'm just glad to have contributed what little I did contribute. if it helped any at all, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I speak for myself when I say we're glad we had you on and
Absolutely.
glad you had like little insertions here and there.
I'll insert a little canned applause right here. Like, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for coming, Andrew.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys.
So I think we can leave it there. Look, you know where to find us because we're everywhere now. So every place that you get your podcast, we are available, including YouTube. And so with that, I'll just say, hey, stay enlightened, stay curious, and we'll catch you next week.